Another series win for the Toronto Blue Jays. Shane Bieber's start. We'll talk about it all. Plus, the series got a little dicey.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Down on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for two to any golf tournament in the USA. Visit 5hewin.com for rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament. Ends October 31st, 2025. As always, I'm Brayden Wasco. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Brayden5 Wasco. Carter First, too, as well on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. And if you want to follow us on our main Twitter account, you can follow us there at Locked On Jays. And if you haven't already hit the subscribe button here on YouTube, make sure you guys do that so you guys get the shorts, the live streams, the podcasts, the videos, the whole ordeal. And it's free. So why not hit the subscribe? I don't even look at my subscribes. I probably have people that I'm subscribed to for like 12 years. But so hit it. It helps us out. It makes all the difference. We appreciate it. You guys are killing it lately anyway. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the Saturday episode with Kai Peterson. That interview went live. So if you haven't watched that one, go check it out. It was a very fun episode. Cool insights on sort of how players get promoted. And, you know, he was just promoted to AA. So he gives us some really cool insight there. Lot to get into. Obviously, the Shane Bieber start. We're going to talk all about that here in this first segment. Then we're going to obviously get into the series itself, break it down. And then, of course, tee up the next series for you guys. I'm not going to lie to the people here, Carter. Me and you, we're in it right now. I was going to say through it. Well, we are through it. We had 10 baseball games in yesterday and today. Every bone in my body is destroyed. And it's the baseball, the beers, the amount of people in a small area for the beer gardens. It was a weekend, big guy.
Yeah, it was an absolute grind. Toronto Blue Jays were grinding. We were grinding as well. 4 games Sunday for us. 5 on Saturday, 1 Friday, and then I had 1 on Thursday as well. I think you missed the Thursday and the Friday game because you were just available for the weekend. That's a lot of baseball. And that's a guy that's, obviously not in his prime anymore in terms of his athletic ability. Still had, some good swings, still had some good plays out there. Definitely, was snapping it around the diamond. But as in terms of running around the bases even, or, running after 2 straight foul balls down the right field line or whatever it ended up being, a little bit of a tougher one. And we're definitely feeling it today. I think I was feeling it probably the most out of anyone, out of all people today. Still ended up, like I said, kind of bowing it out. But this is one of my favorite weekends of the season. We do have our town comes together. Everyone that comes from, whether they're in Winnipeg, out of province, some people even come just to kind of come back for the weekend. So it's a lot of fun. And we had a little bit of an upset. A lot of our friends ended up taking down the 7-time back-to-back million times champions. I think it's the last 7 or 8 years that team has won. And shout out to our friends, the Eagles, the Ruth Place Eagles, Matt Bialek, shout out him specifically. But just credit to them for the weekend that we had there. But on to the Blue Jays baseball, a series against the Miami Marlins. You want to take advantage of the bad teams. You want to beat up on the bad teams. The Toronto Blue Jays were able to do that. Yuri Perez looked very good in that third game. So I was really looking at those first 2 games to take advantage of this Miami Marlins team. But we got to talk about this off the top because, oh my goodness, that's the main conversation that I had, I think, 6-7 times over the weekend. It was Shane Bieber this, Shane Bieber that, and for good reason. Absolutely dominant, picking up exactly where he left off from AAA. Hasn't pitched in like a year, and I know it has been rehabbing in AAA. It has been delayed. I don't care what the rehabbing has been. Shane Bieber's back. Shane Bieber pitched for the Toronto Blue Jays here in 2025. 6 innings pitched, only 2 hits. One of them was a home run in an absolute battle of a bat, a 10-pitch at-bat. And then 9 strikeouts. A guy that's not traditionally that strikeout guy, but effectively using the slider. The changeup is very hard as well. I think it kind of sits at 88.5, 89 miles an hour. Fastball, the command is just ridiculous. It's like he can just, pick a point in the strike zone, just touch screen on the iPad. I want to throw it low and in. I want to throw it high and in. I want to throw it wherever it ends up being. Shane Bieber, so much fun to watch and making a lot of people optimistic about what this playoff rotation and what this Toronto Blue Jays team could do in the playoffs.
Yeah, dude, I'm a believer. That's for sure. This guy was unbelievable. And watching that game, and you brought up just the location of pitches, was so good. We talk about command and a lot of the Toronto Blue Jays pitchers being very good command guys. Shane Bieber's on another level. That stuff, I don't know if he missed a spot all day. Like, it was crazy. And only giving up 2 hits and 1 run in your first outing back into the majors. I'm blown away. I knew in my head, I was like, okay, first 3 starts, don't take too much away from it because he hasn't pitched in a long time. But how do you not take a lot away from this one? If it goes bad, okay, you say, hey, maybe he gets back on the Schneider eventually. He does this good? It is against the Marlins, but still, oh my God, dude, I was blown away. I don't know. Where do you stand on this? Are you still in that feeling out process? Or are you now like, hey, he's fully back? Because I think I'm at the point where I'm ready to say Shane Bieber's back.
Yeah, it's hard not to say that if you watch the AAA outings or at least follow along. If you watch that outing he had against the Marlins, like the Marlins don't have a good record, but this offense isn't really that bad. Like it's not a top tier offense that has a ton of sluggers, but I'd say they're underrated. I think they got some sneaky players that can do some damage throughout that lineup. Just going over some of their team stats, they are 18th in runs, 8th in hits, 11th in batting average, 18th in on base, 18th in slugging. They're not a big power hitting team, 25th in home runs, OPS 18th as well. But yeah, again, underrated offense, a lot of younger pieces around that team. Again, sort of in that rebuilding stage. So you got to expect that they're not going to have, those household names necessarily that you're absolutely terrified of when they come into the box, but definitely a team that you shouldn't take for granted. And Shane Bieber, just the game plan that he had against these younger hitters was absolutely ridiculous. So I'm completely in on Shane Bieber because we've seen it in AAA. Again, they've done their due diligence already. The Cleveland Guardians were not rushing him back whatsoever. The Toronto Blue Jays kind of pick up that plan. Don't rush him back at all. It's been like the last 5 starts that Shane Bieber has had from AAA all the way to the big leagues that he has been absolutely dominant. Like, I'm not expecting 9 strikeouts in 6 innings every single time. He's going to play some good offenses. As we talk about pitchers, you're not going to have your best stuff every single time. That's going to happen with Shane Bieber as well. But I think what this start showed us that when Shane Bieber is on, and if he does have his stuff, he is going to be an absolute menace to deal with and a whole lot of fun for the Toronto Blue Jays fans, including us, the people watching the podcast, just anyone who is supporting the Toronto Blue Jays. They're going to watch that guy, and they are going to be very excited to see him throw every 5th day.
Yeah, dude, I'm fully here. And immediately my mind now goes to... And it's only been 1 start. I don't want to get carried away, but obviously we were talking way before this of where Shane Bieber's going to fit in a playoff run here. Where, is he your game 2 starter? Is he your game 1 starter? Where do you pitch him? If he continues, Shane Bieber has the possibility to be this team's number 1. And I don't think that's a huge shock to anybody because you can see what the guy can do. I'm going to be very interested to see what he does over his next 2 to 3 starts, because that'll really show us if he's back for sure, or if this was a take advantage of maybe a team that wasn't on that day, right? And that'll happen, but I think that'll be the question in my head. And I think over a 2, 3, 4 game span, you'll really be able to see what the takeaways should be from Shane Bieber's starts.
I believe his next start will be made against the best team in the MLB, the Milwaukee Brewers. So if you want a test, you're going to get a test with Shane Bieber. Let's get his feet wet a little bit before he does go into Brewer country and have to take on that painful lineup because they have gritty at-bats. They kind of do what the Toronto Blue Jays do. They're not going to be easy outs. They're not going to swing out a ton of pitches. They're not going to chase, a ton of pitches. They are going to swing when it is in the zone. They're going to be aggressive when it is in the zone. So I think that will be a fun series that we obviously are going to look forward to. But yeah, unbelievable stuff from Shane Bieber. The topic of the weekend for sure. It's just the upside in that trade. That's what we talked about at the time as well, is that this team had a bunch of guys that could go out there and probably give you 4 innings, 5 innings. It might be 2, 3 run ball, but they didn't have that guy necessarily that could go out and win you a game, go out and steal you a game from his pitching performance. Shane Bieber definitely raises that ceiling and gives you that opportunity. If he has his best stuff and he is on his game, he can have these outings relatively consistently. Again, maybe not the strikeout numbers, but he can give you length. He will pitch to a little bit of that contact. He's not going to give up hard contact at all. And he's just going to battle out there, a veteran guy. And the contract is in the Toronto Blue Jays' favor as well, because he either is unbelievable and they might have to try to re-sign him for a little bit of a higher price tag, or maybe it doesn't go as well. I hope that doesn't happen, but you would get Shane Bieber for the following season, assuming that he does take on his player option. So yeah, it's an exciting time to be a Toronto Blue Jays fan. Again, when we look at the Miami Marlins, not looking for the big takeaways of like, oh, they beat up on the Miami Marlins. Like, oh, congratulations, 2 out of 3, whatever it ends up being. We're looking for guys to heat up. We're looking for specific characteristics and qualities, especially when we're looking at the pitching staff. I want these guys to start to catch fire. I want these guys to start feeling more comfortable, because at the end of the day, pitching is going to win championships, and we need these guys to be absolutely locked in if this team wants to go on a serious run.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, the biggest thing, which I think we applauded this front office, was the ability to get starting pitching and have a really good starting rotation. And they have been able to do that for years now. The problem always was, would the bats heat up enough to get you to the certain point? So the pitching was never really been in question. And with how this bullpen has, and we're going to get into a couple guys in this next segment as well, and into some more of the other pitchers. But I feel really good about the spot that the Blue Jays are in right now. And with Shane Bieber starting, it just raises that ceiling even more. Like you said, again, you can't go into a series like this and think, oh, all we need to look at is the takeaways and what can you take. You still have to win ball games. And this team did that. They won 2 of 3. They pushed the AL East lead to 5 games, and they're still in the hunt for that AL title. So that's where you want to be. You want this team to still be winning ball games, even if it is in a competitive fashion, or hey, maybe a squeak one out. This team was able to do that. And there was a game that this Blue Jays team had to squeak out. But at the end of the day, good teams win those games. And when you're a bad team, they don't. So we'll talk about all that as we continue here, Carter. Anything else on Shane Bieber before we move on and talk about everything else that happened this past weekend?
No, just very excited to see Shane Bieber make his starts continuing on as we flow into the end of the season. Just excitement, just a lot of raving around Shane Bieber, and for good reason. So if you guys have any comments, any of your perspectives, whether you think this is something that can occur long term, or is this just, are we not going to see the strikeout numbers, or is Shane Bieber maybe a little bit of a different pitcher? What is your expectations of Shane Bieber for the rest of the season? I know this is maybe a little bit of a redundant question, because it is still, we're 30 games away from the playoffs. Where is Shane Bieber after that first start? Where is he in your playoff rotation rankings? And just in general for the starting rotation, where would you have Shane Bieber and the rest of the guys if you were Ross Atkins, Sean Schneider, and you were rolling out a playoff rotation? Always a fun question to kind of speculate, even though, like I said, we are still a month away from playoff baseball. But like I said, 31 games Toronto Blue Jays have left. 5 games up in the American League East, 4 games up on the Houston Astros. So firmly in a spot where they would have a bye and they would surpass the wild card round, which has given the Toronto Blue Jays absolute fits over these last few seasons. So I think a lot of people would be on the side of, skipping that wild card round and, just jumping straight to the ALDs and absolutely packing the Rogers Center and having one of the most electric fan bases and environments that you could see in the MLB playoffs. But there is still a ton more to talk about, a lot more from game one player specifically that I want to talk about, because he continues to show that home run power that this Toronto Blue Jays team desperately needs, but so much more that we want to get into from over this weekend, and we'll get into that coming up. Today's episode is sponsored by 5-Hour Energy Transfusions. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. This grape, ginger, and lime flavored shot brings the iconic taste of a golf course favorite to a non-alcoholic boost. Perfect for sinking birdies or making great memories with friends. It's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Whether you're out on the course or just need a little push to power through your day, 5-Hour Energy Transfusion delivers the clubhouse flavor you love without ever leaving the green. We obviously had baseball this entire weekend, but before we were golfing as well. I have been in love with these 5-Hour Energy Transfusions, especially when you're getting those, after work rounds in. Work can take a lot out of you sometimes, and you obviously want to enjoy your personal life, especially here in Manitoba, where you really only get about 4 months of a golfing season. You definitely want to take advantage of that. 5-Hour Energy Transfusions have been massive in my golf world, and even over this weekend saved my life a bunch of times, because I was sacrificing a lot of sleep to have a good time and see my friends, and enjoy this last couple summer weeks that we do have here. So 5-Hour Energy Transfusions made that all possible for me, not only on the golf course, but in different aspects of my life as well. Golf is about the good times with good people and good flavors. The grape ginger lime flavor of 5-Hour Energy Transfusion gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without leaving the course or chasing down the bev cart. Now you can amp up the fun even more and just buy, snap, and enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for two to any golf tournament in the USA. Tee up that trip. Visit 5hewin.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament. Ends October 31st, 2025.
So, Carter, obviously, there's one guy that we really got to talk about because people don't give him enough credit. And that's Dalton Varsho. This guy's power, ability, through the limited amount of that he's actually played this season, obviously missed some time with injury. People really hated the trade. And at the time, me and you had many discussions in regards to that trade. But Dalton Varsho continues to prove the doubters wrong, that he should be the guy that, hits 20, 25, maybe even 30 home run guy. On the pace he is now, I mean, it's ridiculous not to say that. He had 2 home runs this weekend, and they were massive to the Toronto Blue Jays' success, obviously, in Game 1. Game 3, obviously, it didn't quite come to fruition, but he's the massive bat that you added into the middle of this lineup just because Dalton Varsho has found his swing, it looks like.
Yeah, he's looked really good, and he's starting to hit pitches kind of all over the strike zone. Still does struggle against the high fastball, but every hitter does have a weakness in the major leagues. But just looking at like the sheer sample size, I know it is a little bit of a smaller one because we haven't really had the availability that we've wanted from Dalton Varsho this season. But this guy's played 43 games and he has 15 home runs. I did the on pace thing before a couple of weeks ago when Dalton Varsho, I think he had 11 home runs, and it's still around the exact same. It's between 50 and 55 home runs if this guy would have played a full season. Again, a lot can happen. You go through hot streaks, you go through cold streaks, but 15 home runs is like kind of competing with a lot of these other Toronto Blue Jays that have been here the entire season. I think George Springer's leading the team right now with 22 home runs. And you got a couple of guys obviously hovering around there. But Dalton Varsho, get down the stretch, if he can stay healthy for the next 31 games, might give a few of these guys a run for their money, especially if he continue on with the power progress that he has been showing this season. We obviously know how good Dalton Varsho is in the outfield. Now that he's sitting like this, like there's some arguments this guy could be a top 5, maybe even top 3 center fielder in all of baseball. One of the best defensive fielders, obviously, in the league. And you start getting that power, if you got a guy that can be on pace for, 35, 40 home runs, the slugging percentage is unbelievable. 591 slugging percentage on the year, 879 OPS. Those numbers would be some of the best of Dalton Varsho's career. Again, it's very small sample size. Can he do it in a larger sample size? We'll have to see. But what I'm mainly concerned about is, can this guy do it down the stretch and in the playoffs? Because he should be well rested. There shouldn't be much fatigue with Dalton Varsho, again, not playing a ton of games. So hopefully he can, kind of get into midseason form right around the time that the playoffs start rolling around here for the Jays.
Well, and again, we talk about takeaways from ball games, right? And over these 3-game stretch, again, we won't go play by play for you guys or anything like that. We'll talk about the series as a whole. Out of this series, there are certain takeaways, and from every series, there are certain takeaways. One big question that I am going to have right up until we hit the playoffs is, can these guys continue? And one guy, Carter, that I'm starting to be slightly skeptical of, or I don't even want to say skeptical, but it's making me have some questions, is Addison Barger and what Addison Barger can give you in a playoff situation. I think he's been fantastic this season, but we're definitely seeing a cold stretch from Addison Barger. So I guess my question, and again, this doesn't have a ton to do necessarily just with this series in particular, but what does Barger got to do to get back on track here? Or is it, because I don't think it's a confidence thing with him. And a lot of the time when we talk about guys going cold stretches, it's like, hey, maybe they have 2 bad games, but then it continues over because it becomes a mental piece. I don't think that's the case here with Addison Barger.
Yeah, there's a few things that you could say with Addison Barger. It could, just be fatigue. It could be pitchers figuring him out. He does not have a large sample size in the major leagues. And once you get enough film out, you can see what weaknesses are exposed, and you can see them very quickly. And with all the technology and just the eyes on a guy like Addison Barger, obviously they have multiple people, looking at these players making these game plans. So I think pitchers are just starting to figure out like where to throw Addison Barger. So I think that is a massive part of it as well. And just like players go through cold streaks. This kind of a generational cold streak. Like he's getting his money's worth during this cold streak. He is 2 for his last 23 in his last 7 games. Over the last 15 games, he's 10 for 49 with a 204 average, a OPS of just over 500. So again, not exactly what you're looking for. John Schneider's still been hitting him higher up in the order. Again, you kind of want him to work out these kinks a lot of the time. But once you have this sample size where it's been 15, 20 games, and it kind of has been a consistent downhill slope, maybe it's time that you move Addison Barger a little bit farther down the order. I'm not sure exactly what it is specifically. It doesn't look like he's chasing a lot more. Like I'd have to do a little bit of a deeper dive. Obviously, did not have time, do a deep dive on Addison Barger with all the festivities that were going on this weekend. It was tough enough to make the time to, watch the Toronto Blue Jays games. But it just doesn't look like Addison Barger is as confident necessarily at the plate. Again, it's tough to be confident when you're 2 for your last 23. But I'm not that worried about Addison Barger. But maybe take a little bit of the pressure off him by dropping him in the order until and just have some coverage in front of him, some guys that can protect him a little bit, drop him down the order and make him take the pressure off of him a little bit so he can hit in lower leverage situations.
Well, and that's just it, right? There are a lot of players with this team that you can move up and down. There are a lot of players having a lot of success right now. And I think that's a great piece because you don't have to sit there and pray to God that Addison Barger does something. You have guys that can fill sort of a role, right? Dalton Varsho's bat being unbelievable. Kirk still being unreal. You got Vladdy, you got Bo, you got Springer, you got the whole crew of, everybody. So there you go. But just going back to sort of the point of Dalton Varsho to Addison Barger, we talk about streakiness in baseball, and that's going to happen. But at the end of the day, I guess the big question has to be, which of these guys do you have faith in the playoffs, right? Like, who do you think is a for sure? And again, we're 31 games away. It's still still some time here. But at this point, Carter, like, name me some guys you were super confident in a playoff series compared to some guys maybe you're not as high on.
Well, obviously the easy cop-out answer here is who's been in the playoffs before? Who has been in that playoff game and felt the different atmosphere compared to some of these other younger players? So we're going to go with guys, obviously like George Springer should be a guy that you would pencil in, should be very good in a playoff scenario. You hope Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bichette can do that for your team as well. Again, more of a little bit of a limited playoff experience. Still have multiple games, multiple series in the MLB playoffs. So hopefully, you can add maybe, times that by 2 with the number of games that they're going to play in this playoffs, especially if, somehow they don't get that bye and they have to play the wild card round. Hopefully they can, do it maybe a little bit of the harder way and run the table the old fashioned way from the wild card round, if that's the position that they end up being in. Again, just making it to the dance is the biggest thing for me. Obviously, I want the bye, but just make it to the dance. So the guys that are veterans, it's kind of the same idea with pitching. It's like Max Scherzer. That's going to be a guy that I'm not going to be worried about that the moment's going to get too big for him. Shane Bieber, Kevin Gausman, a lot of veterans on the staff. So as for the guys that maybe are going to sputter a little bit when it comes to that playoff scenario, Addison Barger probably would be one of those guys that, again, maybe when he gets in a spot, say the Blue Jays are down 2 and there's a runner on first and second, instead of, maybe taking that slap single that he could have into the right field, he's going to go all out. He's probably going to do that Addison Barger typical swing, which is why he's so good. You want him to have that vicious swing. But again, maybe you're going to try to do a little bit too much. Like David Schneider might be a guy that I worry about a little bit as well. But his ability to just have the knowledge of the strike zone, I think that's going to benefit a lot of the guys. So anyone that really chases, I think, is going to be the issue. Anyone that has trouble dealing with off-speed stuff specifically, because these pitchers that make it to the playoffs and that are pitching in these playoff scenarios, they're probably going to throw, 95 at minimum. Like they're going to have that velocity and they're going to throw you a lot of spin. There's going to be a slider. There's going to be a curveball, maybe a sweeper. And then maybe they have that splitter changeup combination as well that are going to keep you off balance. So I think that if you have a better knowledge of the strike zone, which a lot of these Toronto Blue Jays players do have, they do not really chase too much. I think those are the players that are going to benefit in these playoff scenarios. But in, like I said, a general answer, I think the guys that have had playoff experience and the guys that have been around the league more often are probably guys that I expect to maybe, rise to the occasion a little bit more than these younger players, especially with all the pressure that does come with the playoff series, especially with how things have went in Toronto over the last few seasons.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I'm sort of trying to go a little bit off the questions we were asked over the weekend. Obviously, watching these games with friends and maybe I don't want to say casual fans, but more casual fans than maybe we're necessarily used to talking to, whether it's on the podcast, because a lot of you guys that listen are dialed right in. So we had a lot of conversations with some more casual fans, and they had a lot of questions about Louis Varland. Not his best stretch of games over the last little while, and it has a lot of people nervous. This all leads obviously back to the Saturday game, Carter, where things didn't go well for Louis Varland once again. How worried are you there? Because I think for me, I love Louis Varland's stuff, but it seems like he's getting tagged up quite a bit and missing some locations, which is something we didn't necessarily see at the beginning when he first got to Toronto. Are you at all worried about him?
It's just slightly. Like, there's a lot of stuff that I like about Louis Varland. Like, the fastball velocity is definitely there. Like, I love a guy that's going to paint the corner with a 100. But one thing about the fastball is that you see a lot of these guys kind of have some natural movement, whether it's a two seam, whether it's a four seam, whether let's drop into the inside part of the batters. Again, it's not a curveball; it's not going to be breaking 12 inches, but having a little bit of that movement to just get the ball off the barrel, to just have that couple inches can completely change your swing. And what we see with Louis Varland is that it looks like it's dead straight. It looks like it's straight as an arrow. There's no deviation whatsoever. It gets on the plane and it stays on the plane. That's a lot easier for hitters to identify when it comes to Louis Varland, a guy that I think one of the reasons that he probably was a starting pitcher and moved to the bullpen is that the secondary stuff wasn't as good as it should be. You got to go, obviously, multiple innings. You got to face hitters multiple times when you're a starting pitcher. You're going to have to rely on your secondary stuff. You're going to have to rely on different looks that you can give hitters. So I think that is kind of what we're seeing out of the bullpen a little bit here as well, is that the curveball it can be effective, but it's maybe not as consistent as we want to see it. All of his secondary pitches don't necessarily play as well as they do off, or as we'd want them to off the fastball. So I think obviously he has all the stuff. He has the pedigree that he has. He has to make up where he can be a very good pitcher. But I think we're starting to see some of the hiccups, especially maybe getting a little bit exposed here with just the lack of efficiency with his secondary pitches, especially against prolific hitters.
Yeah, that's sort of where I was at too. Was it seems like guys were really eating on the fastball, and I think the only reason that is because he's a guy that relies on the fastball, and when a lot of hitters know that you're going to try to live with the fastball, well, what do they think they're going to be looking for? The fastball, surprisingly enough. So, anyways, that's exactly where I wanted to go with that conversation, because there were a decent amount of people. I mean, we saw hundreds of people over the weekend. And almost every question I got was either about Dalton Varsho, obviously because of the day that he had, and then again had on Sunday, and Louis Varland. A little bit of Jeff Hoffman in there as well. There always will be the questions around him and whatever. How do you think he's going to be? But I think those are my two biggest takeaways from the weekend, Carter. And in saying that, that I guess as I look over this series as a whole, Game 1, the Toronto Blue Jays did their job in large part to Dalton Varsho. Game 2, we started to see this team slip a little bit. And then in Game 3, just it wasn't going well. This is a team that now it does not have an off day before this next series. So I'm almost getting to a point where I almost think that that's better. Keep playing baseball, keep going, especially after what you could consider a tough 2 games to finish out a series. And now you go into another series, which we will talk about right away, playing a not very good baseball team. So how do you keep that mentality up in these games that you now need to win, because every game is important down the playoff stretch? I think that's going to be a huge question. I think there are what I have with this team right now is a lot more questions than I do answers. And that's all because my mind is now gearing to the playoffs. And how do you finish? How do you start the playoffs? How do you get there? Who's the guys that are getting it done? So I think what I would suggest for everybody as they watch our episodes and watch all the games is look for the little things that good, bad, the ugly, whatever it may be, that you can take and think, wow, okay, is this going to affect the playoffs? Is this something that'll carry over? So I don't know, just a cool thought experiment as you watch this week's of games, because probably next week, maybe the week after, we're going to have to start having the conversation of what does a playoff lineup look like? Who's the starters? There's a lot of answers that we are going to get to a lot of these questions. But Carter, in saying that, we do have a series to tee up. Anything else from the weekend that you really wanted to touch on?
Kind of an extension off the Louis Varland stuff. Like we singled them out specifically, but you could really go at anyone in the Toronto Blue Jays bullpen for that second game of the series. Like I know Tommy Nance, Mason Flaherty come in with an inherited runner, but that's a spot that you kind of want to get out of, obviously, with no damage. At least one of those guys. Like you don't want to go to the 12th inning against the Miami Marlins. And no, Louis Varland gave up one run, but yeah, Jeff Hoffman, you could talk about giving up runs. Mason Flaherty, Tommy Nance, the Miami Marlins, like I said, underrated hitting ball club. And when you get a guy on second base, they were doing a very good job at, just kind of doing the manufacturing thing where you move the guy from second to third. They were getting a lot of base hits as well, which obviously helps. But even in that scenario, all you need to do is hit the ball in the outfield and you're scoring a run. And looking at some of these bullpen arms, if you're going to be worried about Louis Varland, you should be worried about a little bit of other guys in this Toronto Blue Jays bullpen because it hasn't really been that good in the month of August. It's from Josh Goldberg, and this was before the Sunday game. But there's some ugly stuff in August, he tweets, for a bunch of the bullpen arms. And this is in terms of ERA. So we look at Louis Varland. He has a 5.59 ERA in the month of August. Seranthony Dominguez, 5.87. So actually worse than Louis Varland. Yariel Rodriguez, a guy that has been unbelievable all year, really up until the last month or so. Something happened in there where all of a sudden Yariel Rodriguez, I think, lost something mechanical, and the command has kind of gone out the window. And that's where we saw him struggle in the year of 2024. But 9.45 ERA for Yariel Rodriguez in the month of August. Mason Flaherty, 5.63. He does get sent down for Paxton Schultz, so that was a little bit of an interesting move there as well. Brendan Little, 4.5, and then Brayden Fisher has a 5.4. So if you're going to get mad at Louis Varland, there's a lot of other guys in this bullpen that you can also get mad about. And if they're going to pitch at this effectiveness into September and into the playoffs, this team is not going to go very far. So I guess one spin zone you could say is maybe they're getting cold at the right time. Maybe, they're going to get all the bad at-bats, the bad pitches, all this crappy spots out of the way so they can be dialed in and kind of start to catch fire again as we progress towards the end of the season. But the only issue with this is that the Toronto Blue Jays play meaningful baseball games. All the last 31 games are going to be meaningful baseball games, especially against these worst caliber teams. If you look at the Yankees schedule, you look at some of the schedules around the American League, specifically the American League East. It's they have a little bit compared to the Toronto Blue Jays, at least they are kind of cupcake schedules. So you want to take business and take care of the bad teams, and you just want to take advantage of a team that has some younger players, does not have the greatest pitching staff, and there has been a few things, especially with the bullpen, like I just said, that you have been a little bit worrisome. But there's still a lot of time, obviously, between now and the playoffs, and you got to hope that John Schneider, Pete Walker, one of the better pitching coaches in all of baseball, can kind of rein things in before things get a little bit too out of hand. But that's the only issue, is that you got to have the balance of let's work through this and get ready for the playoffs. But hey, we still got to win baseball games and get to the playoffs. The Toronto Blue Jays have not clinched anything yet. They could go, again, I don't want this to happen. I don't even want to say this could happen. They could go on a bad stretch where everything kind of falls apart. Just keep the train on the tracks. That's kind of the main theme that we like to keep on this episode. And I think the Toronto Blue Jays have been very good at doing that. And it definitely helps when you can win a series against the Miami Marlins. But there's another team that the Toronto Blue Jays are going to be facing that still pretty much everyone at the trade deadline. So this is a lot different of a looking team than they were at the start of the season. That is the Minnesota Twins. We will break down that series preview coming up next on Locked On Blue Jays.
Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. You guys know how much I love FanDuel. They're my premier betting site. I mean, I don't go anywhere else. It's FanDuel or nothing for me because they do have the best deals. They have all these like special events and stuff like that. It's awesome. And August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel's giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week one even kicks off, this is your moment. Just did a fantasy draft. So I'm all in. I'm locked right in. I got 2 more coming in the next 2 days. It's a wild time. As football fans, as betting fans, as fantasy fans, everything in there, it's going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you guys do that on FanDuel. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. So, Carter, continuing on, obviously we have a series to preview, but something also cool that I wanted to throw out to everybody, and if you haven't heard of this, I suggest you go do it. Listen, we're with the Locked On Network. we talk about it all the time. It's been amazing being able to do this podcast and be fans, give our own opinions, and not really have a ton of oversight in the sense of what can you talk about, what can't you talk about. We talk about what you guys want to hear about, and it's sort of like a request from us, I guess. Locked On wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about listeners and what makes your favorite podcast and how we can make this podcast even better all across the network. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't like, and, it answers some questions for us. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes the survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can find the link in the show notes as well. So yeah, if you guys want to do that, it really helps us out. We hope you guys love the show, but we can always make little improvements. And I think, they want to hear from our fans so that, hey, what works there? Maybe it'll work on somebody else's, right? I don't know. Anyway, series preview here, Carter. Blue Jays, Twins, a team that sold the entire staff pretty much. They were just like, hey, whoever you want, take them. Take them. They were going full rebuild, I guess. Sort of. How do you feel about this one? Oh,
there you go. A team you got to take advantage of for sure. I mean, the Twins, like you said, sold off Danny Cool. For some reason, they keep Byron Buxton. I don't really know why. You're going to not trade a guy that is having a career and just never plays baseball games. We can continue to go down the list. I believe there was 10 or 11 guys that they traded at this trade deadline. Joe Ryan was one guy they did keep. And unfortunately for the Toronto Blue Jays, that is a guy that they will be facing during this series. So that's the only unfortunate thing, but you got to look at when you look at some of these worst teams. A lot of the time they do have one or two pitchers. Just look at the Pittsburgh Pirates. When you go play Paul Skeens, that's going to be a lot different than when you face one of their guys that doesn't really have a lot of service time in the major leagues. So it's like a game inside a game when you have these little bit of these pitching matchups, and I might as well just dive into them right now. Joe Ryan will be facing off against Max Scherzer on the Monday. That will be a whole lot of fun to watch, especially if you do like a good pitching duel. Then you do have Bailey Ober and Chris Bassitt on the Tuesday game. It's a pair of soft throwers that usually play two softer contacts, very similar styles there as well. And then I think you had the Twins guy. I don't have him pulled up here, but it will be Eric Lauer making a start for the Toronto Blue Jays. So John Schneider, saying true to his words, saying it was temporary, at least for Eric Lauer. It's still interesting to see what they're going to do for the rest of the season with all the off days. You can't do a 6-man rotation at this point. I don't think that is going to be good for everyone. Kevin Gausman has already come out and said he doesn't want the 7-man rotation. That's a guy that you probably want as a playoff starter. Do you want to, get him out of his rhythm? I don't think you want to do that. But Brayden, did you have that third starter for the Minnesota Twins?
Yeah, that's Zebby Matthews. He's 2-4 on the season with I think a 5.4 ERA. Let me just make sure. 5.3 ERA. Sorry, I didn't want to just, hurt anybody's feelings by putting his ERA 0.1 over what it should be.
I'm sure he would have been absolutely livid about that. And he definitely likes the 5.3 ERA over the 5.4.
Yeah. You know what? He would have been destroyed. And then I would have heard about it in the comment section. No, 5.3. Carter, I want the series prediction from you because I feel like this is one you could say series sweep, but I think obviously with that first game and the pitching, it's hard for me to give the Toronto Blue Jays a win on that one. I am going to go, it's a Blue Jays series win, but I'm going to say 2-3 just because I'm a little nervous for game one.
Yeah, it's a tough starter, and a starter that has been effective against the Toronto Blue Jays. So as much as I'd love to say this is a sweep, I do think Max Scherzer is going to be very effective. I think it's going to be a pitcher's duel. I just think the Toronto Blue Jays are unfortunately going to come out on the wrong side of that pitcher's duel. I think this is, again, I'm not going to say it's a must-win series, but with the schedule that you do have coming up, you definitely want to take 2 out of 3 here. You definitely do not want to go into this tough stretch coming up with a series loss to a bad baseball team. But just wanted to quickly backtrack to the second game of the series because we didn't go over 2 player performances. Sure. One of them was Bichette. Just shout out to him, 4 hits on the day. I wanted to bring that up. Looked unbelievable. And then George Springer, 3 for 6. And that stat line is obviously very good, but there is something specific that I wanted to talk about with George Springer. It's just how hard he hit those 3 balls. Is that you look at the top 5 hardest hit percent or the hardest exit velocities in that game. You had Agustin Ramirez at 107, Otto Lopez, which people should know as Toronto Blue Jays fans, especially if you watched, in the early 2020s at 107 too. Then was George Springer 109.4, George Springer 110, George Springer 110. This guy was hitting the cover off the baseball. So shout out to Unk for continuing to prove the doubters wrong, continuing to prove me wrong. I don't know what George Springer put in his Wheaties, but my goodness, keep doing whatever you are doing, George Springer. Just wanted to give him the shout out there. But this could be a little bit of a trap series. A team that the Toronto Blue Jays have struggled against, especially in recent history. We obviously do remember that playoff series that was not any fun to watch because you scored 1 run in 2 games. Hopefully that doesn't happen over a 3-game set. Let's go for 9 runs, 3 runs a game at minimum. I would love to see them get to Joe Ryan. Does that happen? We'll have to see. But Joe Ryan's the type of pitcher that you are going to be facing in the playoffs. So again, when we look at the littler things, we look at you want to look at a series overall, obviously, but you look at these specific matchups, especially when you look at pitching. I want to see them hit Joe Ryan. I want to see them take advantage of a guy like Joe Ryan. Again, that's the kind of guy that you're going to have to get to in that playoff scenario. I'm not saying you have to score 7 runs off of them, but you got to have those quality at-bats, maybe chase them out of the game by the 5th inning. That's another thing you like to do as well, especially when you're going to have to face a guy like Scooble, maybe a Max Fried. Get their pitch count up, they're not going to be able to stay in the game for that long. So you just want the quality at-bats, and you want to see the Blue Jays battle against a guy like Joe Ryan.
Yeah, we've had that conversation many of times. It's the fact that can this Blue Jays team compete against good pitching? And I think as an overall this season, you could say yes, because they have gotten to a lot of good pitching out there. But this will be another big test, and I can't wait to see it. I'm going to be pumped up, dialed in. Baseball's done. The big golf weekend is done. So now me and Carter get to chill. But in talking about chill, I have to go and ice my legs because I can't feel them, Carter. So in saying all of that, I think I'm going to go get some sleep, ice the legs, and I got this huge bruise on my hand that I'm also going to try to fix up before my work week starts early tomorrow. So thank you for a great episode. Thanks for a great weekend. Hopefully you guys did enjoy that exclusive interview we did with Kai Peterson. So go check that out if you haven't already. But yeah, keep it locked here, Locked On Blue Jays, every day, Monday to Friday. We'll be back with you guys tomorrow. I'll let you guys in on a secret tomorrow of how my legs are doing. I was walking like I was tiptoeing around the apartment because my calves were so sore. In saying that, Carter, anything else before we kick out of here for the day?
Yeah, I think my eyes feel like they're, 50 pounds each right now. I think this is probably the most tired I've been on the podcast, but obviously we do want to bring you guys the content, and we're grinding out here for you guys. So if we look a little tired, it's because we are. I'm not going to lie. We are pretty exhausted, and I've seen this comment a few times, so I just want to address it. I have my notes on my phone, and a lot of the time I look down, and some people have commented that it looks like I'm sleeping or like passing out on the podcast, which I think is like hilarious because, yeah, maybe brain bores me enough that I'm just going to fall asleep on the pod. But just imagine I actually did fall asleep in the podcast. Like, yeah, we'll keep that in. Nobody's going to realize. But some funny comments from you guys I just wanted to address. But definitely keeps us lighthearted on this podcast. A lot of funny comments that you guys do have. We obviously appreciate the funny ones, the nice ones, not as much of the mean ones. But hey, I'm okay with the mean comment here or there. Keeps us honest. You don't let the egos get too out of check here, especially when you are a very good baseball team, the second in the American League, and sitting in a spot where they will have a bye. At least if they continue playing just above water. Keep their head above water. That's where you want the Toronto Blue Jays to be, and that's the goal is to make the playoffs and go deep in the playoffs. So just wanted to say for the last time, at least for today, thank you guys for watching, and we're ready to go to bed and be hopefully a lot more well-rested for the Joe Ryan Max Scherzer start on Monday, and we'll talk to you guys then.